Trust me, I really wanted to start VBTO3 with Gold Paladin because I feel like I owe you guys that from the VEBO3 meta, but god, this is by far my most hyped deck and I just couldn't stop myself from playtesting it a bunch, and I was just like, well, if I'm already playtesting, I might as well just start the deck preview early. Except it's actually kind of late, so let's get into this. Narukami, my favorite clan of VBTO3. Honestly, by the end of G, this was kind of like my third favorite clan in the game after Nova's. Honestly, just because like I love Vanquisher so much and I was so hyped by the support and just like the playstyle of Vanquisher that I was like, if standard Narukami is just like Vanquisher, then I'm gonna be beyond hyped. And you know, it proved itself. That's basically how it is. So let's get into it. So it is an Axel clan, so make sure you have your Axel markers. Our starter is Spark Kid Dragoon, and then our main grade 3 is Detonix Dragon. So his drill does not pierce the heavens for justice, but instead it's piercing things for evil and all kinds of bad things, because Naoki does use this when he's, you know, under Psycholia, oops. But Detonix has one skill, and that skill is really nice. Once per turn Vanguard circle. When he attacks a Vanguard, you may counterblast 1. If you do, you bind one of your opponent's rearguards in the front row, and then you must discard cards from your hand, which is the same number as rearguards that your opponent has. Then at the end of that battle, he'll restand, and for that turn gain plus 5k and -1 drive. So how this works, it might seem a bit confusing, is actually you attack with it, you counterblast 1 and bind something, and then immediately before the drive check you discard. So if your opponent has 0 rearguards, then you don't discard anything, but if they have like, I don't know, you're playing against Axel and they have like 5, you have to discard 5 at that point before the drive check, so that's really important. But then you only restand, the restand only comes in at the end of the battle, and the plus 5k power and -1 drive is also at the end of that battle. So for the first battle he'll be attacking with 12 or 22 or whatever, like his base number, plus the, like, you know, the regular 2 drive checks, and only after restand he gets the plus 5k and the extra drive. But it's a really good skill because this is a restand plus a bind. It does, like, it's one skill that does 2 things. Basically, I mean, it does 2 things in the sense that it restands and it binds, but it also, you know, gets an extra power bonus. So it's one skill, one card that does so many things, and that's why I love this guy, and he's just really good. Like, he's the perfect finisher slash like your mid to late game card for Narukami, especially if you're not playing against Axel clans, you can just kind of field control them and then use this for like 1 or 0 discards most of the time, because you have ways to bring up stuff from the back as well to make sure that it's always off the field. So this is super good. The bind mechanic is amazing. If you're a new player, what binding is kind of like banishing in a way. So it's like, instead of sending something to the drop zone, you send them to the bind zone, where basically like they're just bound. So they're kind of like banished in Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's the way you should be thinking about it. So if you're playing something that relies on the drop zone, then you know this is going to be a problem. If you play Angels and they retire your Feather Palace, you're not going to bring it back. So I mean, if they bind your Feather Palace, not retire it. So that's the Detonix Dragon, and then his companion is the Tonic Stinger Dragon, which is also like, this is the main grade 3 ride that you want to always go into first, because his first skill is already great. On Vanguard Rearguard Circle, when he appears, you may counterblast 1. If you do, choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the front row, bind it, and he gets plus 5k power until end of turn, which is really nice because this is a counterblast 1 for bind, and he's a 17k attacker, which is pretty nice in my opinion. So just the bind is really nice, because this is one of the, like, these 2 cards are really the only ones that use counterblast every single game. Everything else, like, there's one more card that really uses it, but the other one that you see over here is kind of like a fringe scenario. But the second skill of Stinger is when he is ridden on top of, so let's say when you ride Drill over Stinger, you can call him out of your soul, or basically like call him out onto a rearguard circle, and for that turn your Vanguard gets plus 10k power. So it's basically a break ride where you ride him, this calls itself out, but then for example the Detonix Drill will receive the plus 10k buff, which is just absolutely amazing. So that's why he is absolutely just a great card overall. My 4 copies just kind of like grabbed each other and became one, so don't mind that. I'm gonna quickly just do it like this, I guess. But so the Tonic Stinger is an amazing card, and just overall absolutely amazing. Even just calling him down is great if you have the counterblast for it. Finally, my one of, I'm debating if I want to play 2, because this in an Axel meta, I think you need to play 2. So we'll see how the meta shapes up in the English side, but Right now it's looking like a lot of Protect and Force, so I think one of should be fine for now. But Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion has a skill, which is Vanguard Circle, act once per turn. You may counterblast 2, and for that turn he gains plus 5k power, plus 1 crit. But if your opponent has 2 or more rearguards in the front row, instead of the crit, he gains the ability to attack all of your opponent's front row in one attack. So he becomes a one-man army, essentially, that can just blow your opponent's entire front row. You're playing against Azel or like Murakumo, which has like 3, or like Great Nature that has like 3 Axle Circles. You just bust all of them at the same time. 3 Axle Circles, the 2 front row rearguards, plus the Vanguard. You know, you're basically getting 5 to 6 attacks in one unit, essentially, which is pretty amazing. And then if you don't know the rulings, it's basically like the unit that's being attacked cannot intercept. So that's the same as like when you attack a rearguard. Like you cannot like intercept with that rearguard. They have to guard it or they have to let it through. So basically if you want to guard those units, you have to guard them each separately. So all of them has to be individually guarded if you want to, or you can choose which ones you guard, which ones you let pass, you know, that kind of thing. But they all count as like individual battles, but just all happening at the same time. So that's something worth to note. But I think he's a great card in the Axel meta, but when there's a lot of Protect and Force, doesn't do that much. You retire stuff, you bind stuff fast enough to not need to rely on him too much, but he's a great card and his art is absolutely beautiful. Then we have Dragonic Death Scythe. He has 2 skills. First is Rearguard Circle, on placed. You may Soul Blast 2, then choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the front row and bind it, and for that turn he gains plus 3k power. So he's already going to be a 12k attacker, which is super nice, and that Soul Blast 2 to bind is nice because that's basically our only way to bind without counterblasting. The Soul is a little bit of a problem because you'll get this off once, but then you're always calling this out of your soul. So basically you're always going to have 1 soul left after that, which is going to be like your starter or something. So you kind of have to ride like another Detonix on top just to keep a soul, or like not use the Tonic Stinger. But why would you not? Like, it's such a great ability, you always want to be using the Tonic Stinger. So that's why I think like it's a little bit of a soul problem, but even then like you just rewrite the drill and then you're able to reuse that skill. His second skill is Rearguard Circle. When he attacks a Vanguard during that battle, if there are no units in the same column as this unit, then he gains plus 5k power. What's cool about this is that if you don't play against an Axel mirror match, he will always have that plus 5k when he attacks the Vanguard, because you will not have another unit in the column if you call him on an Axel Circle. Like, the opponent has to generate their second Axel Circle, because Axel Circles generate parallel to each other, so that way like you get yours on the left first, your opponent gets theirs on the left first, but your left is their right, if that makes sense. So they have to get a second one to actually match him to not give you that plus 5k power bonus. So it's an interesting little mechanic. I think W Slasher talked about it in his ruling videos, so do check that out. But really good card, definitely a 4 of, and super worth playing. Then we have 4 Recklessness Dragon. This is your other main form of counterblasting in the deck. Vanguard and Rearguard Circle skill on place, you may counterblast 1 and bind the opponent's front row rearguard of your choice. So this is a nice card because if your opponent commits early, you can just ride him on turn 2 and then bind something immediately and then use your counterblast like that. So that's already really good. His second skill is on Rearguard Circle when he attacks the opponent's Vanguard. If your opponent's front row has 1 or less rearguards, then he gets plus 3k power for that battle. So that's pretty nice because he's a 12k attacker essentially on almost every scenario. Like I said, unless you're playing against like an Axel mirror match or something, he's going to be really good. And so he's a really great card in my opinion, and overall just he binds, he gets extra power, that's all you need to do. And he's the main, like, these 2 cards plus the Recklessness are your main use of counterblast in the deck as well. Then I'm running this 2 of slot. I think like some people play 12 grade 2s, some people play 10 or 11. It's kind of flexible, but there's also a lot of different choice for that last grade 2 as well. The one I've chosen is the Thunderstorm Dragoon. His skill is on Rearguard Circle. During your turn, if your opponent's front row only has 1 or less rearguard, then he gains plus 5k power. So if they have 1 front row rearguard, it's still fine. If they have 2, then he loses that 5k power. But if they have 0, then he also has that 5k power. So 14k attacker for free is pretty nice. 24 when he's on an Axel, so I think that's quite good overall. And just like, I just like him for that. Like, he's simple, he's a good attacker, you can drop him early without really feeling too bad about it, and just, I think he's just a good card. Next up is, in my opinion, the MVP grade 1 of the deck, and honestly one of the MVPs of the deck in general, which is the Rising Phoenix. So he has a drop zone skill. During your turn, when your opponent's rearguard is bound, you can call this card from drop zone to Rearguard Circle, and if you do, then for that turn he gains plus 3k power. This is really good because you can guard with these to your heart's, content, and then just basically when you bind anything, like by riding, I don't know, your your Recklessness or your Tonic Stinger, like anything like that, you just call him back out and he's an 11k attacker. Call him on an Axle Circle and he's going to be 21 as well, which is super, really good. Also, what's nice is that you can have already called him, and then, you know, he's going to lose that 3k power, so he's going to be just like an 8k beater, which is pretty sad. What you can do is, like, when you ride, like, I don't know, Drill over Stinger, you can call the Stinger from Soul on top of the Phoenix, and then the Phoenix retires first. Then, the Stinger's effect goes on standby, you counterblast one to bind something, and then Rising Phoenix sees that and uses his skill to call himself back out with the plus 3k power. So you can legit just call over him, and it's not actually a minus because you're bringing him back with more power. So that way you're basically recycling a unit and making him even better. So Rising Phoenix is an insane card. Really good. Honestly, a staple in Narukami, I think, and it's just an amazing card. Next up, we have the Lizard Soldier Riki. Bang on the rearguard circle, on place, you may Soul Blast 1. If you do for that turn, he gains plus 3k power, and you make your opponent swap rearguards between the front and the back rows, and they all move simultaneously. So that's good because, as you can see, all the binding effects, they only bind the front row. But what you can do is you can use like all your effects to bind the front row, and then you can use Riki to pull up the back row and then bind it or attack it, which is super good, and that way you can reduce the cost of the Detonix drill to be either 1 or 0 in terms of how much you have to discard. So Riki's a good card. I would like to run him at 4, and I do run him at 4, so I think he's the preferred ratio in that sense, so that's why we run him at that amount of copies, so he's definitely a good card. Moving on, we play 4 Demolition Dragon. So Narukami, as every Axle deck, likes to go first, but Demolition gives us a play to do when we're going second, which is his second skill, which is when his attack hits the Vanguard, only on Vanguard Circle, you may draw 1. So going second, you basically pressure your opponent from the very get-go, and that's super nice, because if they guard this, they lose their first counterblast, and usually they're not gonna, because they might have something that they want to do with that first counterblast, and so they're just gonna let this pass, and then you're gonna get an extra card in hand, which is really nice. His second skill is rearguard circle only. If your opponent doesn't have any rearguards in the front row, he gets plus 3k continuous, also on your opponent's turn. So 11k on your opponent's turn is pretty nice, but they just have to call something to the front row essentially to stop this. But he's a great card, like 11k attacker, booster, or just like the second skill. I really like him for that, so definitely a 4 of. And then 2 of Helena. Some people don't play Helena, some people just stop at 12 grade 1s as well and play more grade 2s. I think Helena is okay. This is again like a flex spot. There's quite a few really good grade 1s in Narukami. Like, I'm surprised at the card quality of Narukami going in from like the very first set of support, right? So to me this was really surprising, but Helena is a nice card because rearguard circle once per turn. During your turn, if you bind your opponent's rearguards, if you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, you may Soul Blast 1 to countercharge 1. Like, the only problem with this is, again, that Soul Blast, but at least it's only Soul Blast 1 on like the 2 of Death Scythe, but really almost always your soul is going to be going to Death Scythe, so this is really just like, or it's going to go to the Riki, so I'm not sure if Helena is the best play. Like, I've gotten it off 1 or 2 times, but I think when I'm preparing for tournaments, I will swap this out for something else, because there's quite a few other targets, or you can just take this out entirely and play more grade 2s. That is also an option. So that's just kind of my thought here with Helena. I think it's still a nice card in quite a few scenarios, but again, it's kind of, it needs more testing, I think. So for now I'm playing Helena, but again, take this as a flex spot. You can put anything else in this 2 of spot. Now my trigger lineup is pretty interesting, I think. I mean, I have the 4 PGs and the 4 heals, which is standard, but I'm playing 6 front because this deck can profit off of the fronts so easily. You can slap fronts on your Rising Phoenix and stuff like that. Front triggers in general are just really nice in this deck in my opinion, but I was testing with no crits for a while, so then I was like, my opponent then just like noticed, he was like, okay, I'm pretty sure it doesn't play crits, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna play 1 crit just for that 1 of scenario. You could play 2, but I think you need the extra draw. Like, I played with 6 draws, and I think even then 6 draws is quite nice. You could maybe cut 1 of the fronts if you want to play 1 more draw or 1 more crit, but I think the draws are really important in this deck just because of the discard cost. Like, if you're playing against an Axle deck, it's really hard to, you know, just have enough cards in hand to make it worth it to like not minus yourself too hard with the Detonix. So that's why like these draws are nice, because you can at least discard them, and then otherwise like you can just slap this on an Axle Circle and it's a 15k attacker. Like, come on, that's still a good enough kind of push. With a front trigger it's gonna go up, and so that's why I think they're fine. So even then I think it's fine to be playing like I've seen a lot of the topping Narukami builds, and there've been all kinds of wacky trigger lineups just because the deck can pull that off. Some people play like only like 2 or 3 fronts and focus on crits. You can do a lot of different stuff, but from my experience, focusing on the fronts is definitely better. So this is my deck lineup for the deck preview at least, so this probably will change when I'm actually playing it in tournaments, or at least this is like my, I don't know, 3rd draft of the deck or something like that, but I like it quite a lot. And so that's what I've kind of arrived at. So now that we've taken a look at the deck itself, let's take a look at how it performs in game. And this showdown finally begins. So we're going to be playing against, once again, my teammate Amber-sama. So he's been helping me out with playtesting quite a bit. And so it looks like we're going to be going first as well, which is pretty huge. Or at least I think so, if I'm not mistaken. But we're going to be playing against Golds, which, you know, as I mentioned, is actually a pretty hard matchup, because against Axle decks, to me, Axle mirror match is the hypest possible mirror match that you can have between like clan types. Oh no, we're going second, sorry, I couldn't see the dice while editing, but it's actually good because we can go into the Recklessness, or to the Demolition Dragon, and get, like, he's not going to guard it, so we're going to hit, he's going to take 1 damage, we're going to get the extra draw, and we're with an 8-card hand on turn 1, which is definitely very nice. So he is actually going to miss the Wonder Azel, which is super sad, because there's 2 good Azel deck types right now, I think. One is like the super, like, Azel focus deck, which runs Bowmains and the Wonder Azel in order to make sure that you arrive at the Blonde Azel as soon as you hit your turn 2. But then there's the other type, which runs that one dude that's kind of like a Vivian, that instead of Kama Soul plus 1 does a discard 1. And so that deck type, it's not as consistent in arriving at Azel, but it is better in the sense that you're doing other things outside of just focusing on Azel, if that makes sense. So we're going to go into the Thunderstorm, check 1 no triggers, and we basically haven't checked any triggers so far, but I'm playing a very conservative early game because I don't want to give my opponent too much damage, because I know that if I give him too much damage, and like, he went to the Sagromor, which is pretty sad because he basically bricked, because he didn't have the Wonder Azel earlier, and now he has to essentially like go into the Sagromor. At least with the Sagromor, now he can like call, he drew 1 from the grade 1 and drew another one from the Sagromor. That confused me for a second actually, because now he's going to be able to Soul Blast 1 for the Din Drain as well, to draw 1. So he was just explaining me the effects because I was confused why he drew 2, but he was like, oh, that's because the grade 1 and the Sagromor both draw 1 on place. So that's why that's how it worked out. So now he's going to call down Wonder Azel, and also call down the grade 1 that goes into Soul when you ride a grade 3, and then draws 1, but also provides Soul, which is really important. So he's trying to fish for any kind of Azel actually. He gets a draw, which helps him get to that objective as well. I did take this attack, so, and I'm pretty sure he did draw, yeah. But now he's going to be able to attack with the Wonder Azel. I did get the draw, meaning it doesn't hit, but this one is still going to hit because he got the plus 3k power on it, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to guard with that. Or no, he didn't even get, no, I believe that, yeah, that still hits because of the trigger, not the plus 3k power. So here I'm going to ride into the Stinger, use the effect. I did guard with the Rising Phoenix, so I'm able to call it out from the drop zone and gets plus 3k. I called down the Death Scythe, I'll be able to Soul Blast 2 to retire, to bind the Din Drain. I'm not sure if that was actually necessary, maybe I should have kept the Death Scythe for the next turn with the Detonix Drill, because that way I could like consistently get rid of it. So here I attack, I get a draw, give the power to the Thunderstorm, and then check a grade 1. There goes his Ravenhaired, which I mean wouldn't be doing much because you need to have a Blonde Azel in the Soul for it to do anything basically. He's gonna guard by Death Scythe, and then he's gonna see if he takes the Thunderstorm or not, but it looks like he's thinking to guard. He's gonna drop a heal and a draw, so that's 35k shield, and that is enough to guard it. So he's gonna restand, let's see if he has the Blonde Azel now. Still nothing. And then this is the card that I meant, is the Vivian, that you discard 1 instead of Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, which is nice because now we can look at top 3, call one of them, and the others go on the bottom of the deck. And then through both Vivian and this guy, you're able to essentially kind of stack the bottom of your deck. And while we were playing, he was like, oh yeah, I know like the bottom 8 cards of my deck, and I was like, wow, that's pretty good. And what's kind of sad is like, now we've seen one Azel come out, and we've also, like, he's been through, like, what, at least 4 cards on the bottom of his deck as well, and he's been drawing so much too, and he still hasn't seen any Azel in his hand. So there's still, like, what, if he's running 4 of each Azel, there's still 7 left. I go with the Rising Phoenix, which is definitely very nice. Intercept with a Thunderstorm, because that was only a 16. Attacking with a Sagamore, I'm going to let that hit. He gets a Wonder Azel and a Vivian. I get a heal. I don't heal, but I get the extra power, which is also nice. And he's going to attack my Death Scythe, which I definitely don't mind, because now I can do some interesting plays as well. Just because, or no, I think this one still hits, just because I'm pretty sure this one does actually hit my Vanguard too, or I think he's debating between where he wants to attack. But, I mean, regardless of where he attacks, I'm going to actually intercept with a Death Scythe, because I don't really need it anymore, because I can now ride, because here I'm thinking, do I ride the drill immediately, or do I wait one more turn? And try to, because I'm like, he's on 3 damage, I don't think I can finish it this turn, because, you know, especially when you're running 1 crit, it doesn't actually, you know, make a big like, it's not that high of a chance that you're gonna, you know, crit into it. So I'm gonna ride the Stinger over the Stinger, and what's nice is that I still get my Axle Circle, and I get to use the Stinger. I'm gonna call the Stinger over the Rising Phoenix, as I said. Now I use the Vanguard Stinger's effect to counterblast 1 and bind something, and then I'm able to use both of my Rising Phoenixes. And then I'm debating if I want to use the other Stinger or not to bind something else. I think here I probably should, just because I'm thinking, like, if it's worth for the counterblast and stuff, but I do use it. I'm going to bind the Din Drain in the end. Maybe the other grade 1 would have been better, because he has an effect that at the end of the battle that he boosted, if you have an Azel Vanguard, you can put him into Soul to Superior Call something. So I think, also he accidentally, no, he bound it correctly, but there were some points in the game where he would, like, bind something instead of retiring it, and vice versa. I check a front, which is really huge. He checks a crit, which does help him out as well. But here I'm going to be able to attack with a 27 from the Stinger, so that's going to require a 10k guard if he wishes to guard that, or he has to take it. He drops a 15, and then these other 2 are attacking for 31 each because they got the front. So it's 31 and 31. I push him to 5 because I thought that there's no real point to stop attacking, but in a lot of games, actually, where I was playtesting against Narukami, I would just, like, attack with Vanguard and then stop attacking. Like, I would have 2 more Rising Phoenixes waiting, and I would just stop attacking there, because I was like, I do not want to give them more counterblast, because the best way to win against Azel in Standard after the VB203 support is just don't give them counterblast. Let them call everything from hand to try to rush you after their initial rush. They're going to deplete everything, or they're going to not call anything, and they're just going to wait a turn and swing at Vanguard for like 1 or 2 turns with Vanguard only. And so it's a really interesting matchup, and playing against Azel with the new support is really cool, because smart players will know how to outplay you, but then if you know how to outplay them, it's also a really cool interaction. So we've had quite a few of those interactions in our playtesting of this matchup, so that's kind of the culmination you see here. But it's unfortunate that he bricked and he still hasn't found any Azel to ride into, so that's a really big shame, because that would have shown off really like how this like plays out. But sadly, like the other games we playtested where I recorded, like he was playing Garmor, and then I felt like I wanted to record with the Azel gameplay instead. Here you can see I right into the Detonix drill. I then call the Stinger over my Rising Phoenix, and I'm able to basically, I played 1 card this turn. Like you can see, I've played 1 card so far this turn, and I essentially just like, I got, what, 2 cards on the board, which, and like, plus the Rising Phoenix got the plus 3k buff as well, so that's really, really nice. So here, I'm going to call down the Ricky, I'm going to force him to swap rows. So he's going to swap his grade 1 into the front, and then the grade 1 switches with the Vivian as well, so I'm able to do that. Because here right now, I actually want to attack his rears to decrease the discard cost for my Detonix drill, but he also knows that I want to do that, so actually he's gonna want to protect all like his rear guards too, but he needs to have enough to protect his Vanguard as well. So his hands are like, what, he has 7 cards in hand, which, you know, is it really worth to guard that much to stop me from discarding that much? So here, like, he discards the Vivian, he drops the crits to guard that one. I'm gonna attack with the Stinger for 12 on this one. So he needs a 10k guard, he PGs it, drops a PG for it. So he's actually, I think at this point he knows he would lose, so he's actually just like making sure that I don't decrease the cost of my discard. He guards that one as well. And here I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna like screw it. I'm gonna bind 1 and I'll just discard 4 at this point. Like he's on 5 damage with 2 cards in hand. There's no way that like I'm not gonna win this one, so I'm just gonna drop the 4 non-triggers from my hand. and here it's just like, you know, he has 2 cards in hand, like I am gonna win this because I have this attack plus 2 more left. I get a heal as well. I'm gonna give the power to the Stinger and another Detonix drill, and then still attack with the drill, and that's gonna be game. So there goes the Azel. Really unfortunate. There's a second one, but yeah, so that is actually it for this game. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think this deck is really, really good. It does need quite a bit of playtesting because there's some pretty hard matchups like Azel in my opinion, but then against like Protect and Force decks, I think you can have a pretty solid matchup. So it's a really, really fun clan. I highly recommend it. I've been hyped for it for a really long time, and I know a lot of other people have as well. So I hope that this video did do justice for it as well. So that's going to be it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to click the bell button as well as check out the social medias in the description. Also join the Discord channel if you haven't already, and check out the second channel as well. God damn it, I keep doing the order differently. But anyway, that's it for me today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.